Hello. There's not many people here yet, so we'll just wait a little bit, I guess. Let's hope some more people join. Yeah, only 4 people, yeah. Um, will you missing the last lesson affect this lesson? Um, did you not watch the recording? Okay. It might affect it a little bit. If you're running into issues during this class, like you're not up to date because of the last class, you missing the last classes, you can leave it be for this class and then after the class watch the previous ones first and then this one. All right, still only 4 people. That is not much. Let me send a ping real quick. All right, quick ping. We've got 5 people now here. 6. Okay, more people are joining. Hello. Right, let me switch to my screen. Oh, let me share my screen too, because you guys can't see it yet. There we go. All right. Um, so for this lesson, this class will be all about advanced UI components. So we'll be looking at sliders, drop-down menus, and scroll views, and a little bit about animations. I put this document in the class resources channel, so you can check it out there. Is it okay that your Rec Room Studio is updating? Yeah, that's fine. Mine is also asking for an update. Not sure if I should do that though. Probably not, because that's going to take a while. It takes 30 seconds. From what I've seen, the updates usually take like quite a while. It might be different in your case, but in my case, it can take quite a while. Does it have to be updated to work? Maybe. Not entirely sure. We'll just see. If it doesn't work, then I'll update it, but it seems to be working now, so. Alright, so first we'll be starting with sliders. So to add a slider, first we will be going into our UI that we set up in the past lessons. So just double click the prefab. Then I will be going to page 2 because we set up 2 pages in the last one. So I will be hiding the first one, the first page, and I'll be going to the second page. There we go. So in here, I will be adding a slider. So to do that, I will right click on the page and then go to UI. And then there is slider right here. There we go. We've got a very small slider. Of course, most people know what a slider is. It allows you to grab this little round circle and slide it across this thing. And you can add values to it. So if you look in the inspector, you can set the minimum value and the maximum value. So if you slide this, it will be a value between 0 and 1. You can change that to be 0 to 100 or anything you would like. You can also change the direction. So if I want it to be right to left, there you go, you'll see it change immediately. Or bottom to top. There we go. In this case, I will be making a very simple like level XP indicator. So you'll see like how much XP you have until your next level. So that's what I will be showing you how to make. First of all, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because it is very small. So in the inspector, we can just change the width and height. I'll do 500 by 100. That'll work. You'll see it's very warped now, very stretched, but we can easily fix that if we go into the slider in the hierarchy, and there we see the background, which I will also give a different look. So if we go to the UI shapes, and I'll choose this one, give that a different color, a little bit darker. There we go. Then we see fill area and handle slide area. So the handle slide area, this will have the handle. So we can also change this one. You can set the width, and in my case, I'll be actually removing the handle, because since this is a XP slider, like a level XP slider, you don't need to set it yourself. So we really do not need the handle, because we will not be setting the value ourselves. So in this case, the fill area, that is the area that will be filled. So, and then the fill is the image that will show. So over here, I will be setting that one like that too. And you'll see that it goes outside of this little box, which we probably do not want. To fix that, we can add an image. We can add a mask to the background. There we go. And then drag the fill area inside of the background. There we go. Now we have fixed that little issue. So it doesn't go outside the background anymore. You can also, if you click on the slider, we can play with the value so you can see what it will look like. The class resource thing, is just a very quick overview of how to do some things. It's much more recommended to watch the actual recording of the class because there's a lot more information in it. All right, I will be changing the color of this fill to maybe like a greenish. Do you need anything completed from last lesson to do this one? All you will need is a canvas to do this one. And a button. A canvas and a button are the two things that you really need to be able to do this class. All right, so now we have a pretty basic slider. And we can see, if I put it to 100 the value, you'll see that it doesn't completely fill it. That is because the fill area has, as you can see, it has some spacing on the sides. And you can also see that in the inspector. So I will be setting all this to 0. There we go. And the fill also has some weird spacing, so I will also be setting that to 0. Okay. And for some reason, there is still spacing. Ah, there we go. So we'll have to change the transform option to this one, and then we can still see the spacing options. There we go. So now it is a perfect slider. So that is pretty much all about sliders. You can also disable interaction for it, because in this case, since this is an XP slider, we don't want people to manually change this. So I will be turning off interactable. That will not allow people to interact with it. All right, let me just position this up here somewhere. There we go. Now we have a very basic XP slider. If you want to get the value of a slider, we can make a property. So we go to the main prefab object, and then in the inspector we can add a property. We can call this get XP or something like that. Then we drag in the slider as the object. And then as the property, we go to slider and then value. You can also get the max and min value if you would like, but in this case, just the value will just get the XP value that this slider has. And to be able to set the value, we can make a function. So down here where it says functions, I will add a new function and call that set XP. We're going to need to add an input port, which I will call XP, and then select the type to be a float, because sliders always take floats. If you don't know, floats are a type of number. They are decimal numbers, so not a full number, but decimal numbers. You can also see that if we go to the slider and look at the value, if we change this, you'll see that it changes into a decimal number. You can also select to have whole numbers, but I'm pretty sure that still takes floats as a value type. All right, so back to the function. We've got the input port. So then for the instruction, we will drag in the slider. And for the method, we will select slider and then value set. And then for the float, we select XP. So that will allow us to set the XP. You can also set the min and max value if you want to have it like super dynamic. That is also very useful to do. All right, that is sliders. Is there any questions about sliders? No questions? All right, then we're going to move on to drop-down menus. So to add a drop-down menu, we right-click on the page again, then go to UI and drop-down, Tech Mesh Pro. So here we have the drop-down. If we look in the inspector, we can see all the options that we have. So we've got option A, option B, option C. We can add more options or we can remove options. And we can name them. So in this case, I will be naming them 1, 2, and 3. So you'll see it immediately changes in here. So you really don't have to do much yourself here in the hierarchy. You can do it all in the inspector. Then let's see here. So we've got the label, the arrow. You can change all of this pretty much. For the label, I want to use a different font. So I'll click on the label and then choose a different font. I'm pretty sure I had some different fonts. Yep, I've got that one. You can make it bold. There we go. And I would want to use a different image. So I will put that in too. Okay, so it's already looking a lot better. It's just very small, so I will make that bigger, like 300 by... That's very big. Okay, I think that's pretty good. You'll see now that we've made it bigger, the text and the arrow are still very small. So we need to size those up. For the text, you could turn on auto size. That will make it so it always fits in this area. Even if you type a lot, it will always fit. Or you can just set the size yourself. In my case, I'll just turn on auto size and make the maximum a little bit less. There we go. And then the arrow, we also want that to be bigger. So I will set the height. Actually, the height, we can make this a lot more dynamic. So it dynamically scales with the size of the drop down. To do that, we can click on this right here and then go down to this one that will scale to the top and bottom. And then we can say like, I want a 10-point spacing on the top and bottom. And now if I change the height of the drop down, you'll see that the arrow automatically scales with it, which is really good. But you'll see that the arrow is very stretched. We can also fix that by going to the arrow and saying preserve aspect. So now it will always stay the same aspect ratio, but it's still very small, as you can see, and that is because of the width. So we can make that a little bit bigger. But now that we are changing the width, you'll see that it goes outside of the dropdown. To fix that, we can either manually change where we want to position it using the position X, or we can make it automatically position itself correctly, which is the better option. To do that, we need to set the pivot point to the right instead of the center. So we will set the X pivot position to 1. And then we can set the X position here to 0. And now you'll see that it is positioned correctly. And you'll also see that if we change the width of the dropdown, it will automatically stay positioned there. Okay, that's very big. There we go. All right. That is pretty much how a dropdown works. I will put that one up here too. And I'm going to launch Rec Room real quick to show you what you can do with the dropdown and the XP slider. Let me set the XP slider to 0. There we go. Oh yeah, and to get the value of a dropdown, it is pretty much the same as the slider. We just make a property. So get dropdown value or something like that. Then drop in the dropdown. And then TMP Dropdown. Actually, hold on. Let me see which one is the correct one. Okay, I think we need to put in the label of the dropdown, and then select Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and then scroll down till you see text all the way at the bottom. All right, let me load up Rec Room, and then we'll test it out real quick. Is there any questions so far? No questions? It's a very quiet class this week. Rec Room update. Everyone is slowly starting to quit. Then I'd love to know why. Is it too difficult? Is it boring? It happens with every class? Ah, okay. Oh, yeah, if you already know that, if you already know a lot, then yeah. What do you drag into the property for the slider to get its value? So for the slider, you just drop in the slider into the property and then select slider and then value. Also, yeah, Kohana, I kind of. It mostly feels like I'm just recording a YouTube tutorial. Can you have partners for the project? So I asked Trunks, and he. So yeah, someone asked if they could work together for the final project. So I asked Trunks, and he said that the better question is, will I or they be able to tell who did what during the project? Because that's gonna be difficult. Because of course we don't want just one person to do everything in the project. That wouldn't be fair. Um, yeah, the anchor stuff, I'll go over that. This update is taking a long time. Oh, there we go. right as I talk about it. Mr. Ink, I think the reason why those drop down items are smaller is because of this right here. Yeah, that this template, if we right click it and toggle active state, we can see sort of what it's going to look like. So you'll see these options are very small, like a lot smaller. If we go into this, into the viewport, then content and item, so we have the item background, the checkmark and the label. We can change these. So you can set the sizing yourself, the text, font and everything. And when you're done with that dropdown, you can just disable it again by right clicking and toggle active state. All right, here we are. So we've got the 2 pages. Oh, and my mouse is doing this again. Okay, here we go. So we can click on the drop down. Yeah, so like Mr. Ink also had, it is pretty small. But if we click on these options, you'll see that it changes. That is pretty much a drop down. It's very easy. And then to get the value, we should have, if we use the get property string, we can connect it right there. And then get drop down value. There we go. It says 1. If we change it to 2, now it's 2. For the final project, can we add stuff we didn't learn? Like if we didn't learn the anchor stuff, could we add it? Yeah, of course. There will just be a certain set of requirements for the final project. But you can always add more. That's up to you. Alright, so now we can get the value from this drop down. Now to set and get the slider value. So as you can see, since I turned off the interaction, I cannot manually set it. So we need to use circuits to set it. How does my, yeah, I don't know. Like it kind of looks like I got the old Maker Pen menu with like all the old colors, but then, wait, what the fuck? If I select them, then they change color. I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, it's really weird. And it's not just this, like there's also weird things in menus like this. I cannot see the friends. It's just completely broken. It's really, really weird. And as you can see, all the images and things are also like faded out, the colors. Could that be because you have... I don't think so, because for this class, I'm running this on a VM, a virtual machine. I think it's just because of that, because just on my main PC, Rec Room runs completely fine. No issues in the watch or anything. Also, the Maker Pen is not weird like this. So I do think it's just because of it being a virtual machine. It's still weird though, but yeah. Anyways, we should have a function. So if we get a studio function, place that and configure it, we have set XP. And we connect it, and then I'll just set it to 10. Let's try that, because I set it to a 0 to 100 value. There you go. That is 10. If I set it to 100, now it's full. So that's how to set the value. And if I set this to like, there we go, a very precise value, then we'll use the get property float. Get XP, that's what we called it. Connect it, and there we go. Oh, it rounds it up for some reason. Does it always do that? It rounds it. That's interesting. I've never seen that. I am using VMware. Alright, so that is sliders and drop downs. Then now we are going to move on to scroll views. Scroll views are absolutely amazing. I love them. So let me go back into the UI. So for this page 2, instead of it just being a page like this, let's make this a scroll page. So to do that, let's first disable the things that we currently have in the page. We can select them all, and then in the inspector in the top left, uncheck the checkbox, and that will disable them for now. So right click the page, then go to UI, and then scroll view. You'll see we get a little box with a vertical scroll bar and a horizontal one. So to set this as the same size as our page, we can go into the inspector, click this thing, and then select the spacing from all sides, and then set all the spacing to 0. There we go. So now it's the same size as our page. You'll see the scroll bars are already pretty much there. They are a little bit messed up because of our rounded edges, but we can very easily fix that. If we go into the scroll view, you can also set a background color, of course. But first I'm going to select one of my custom images. There we go. Much better. Okay, to fix this rounded edge scroll bar issue, we go into the scroll view and then scroll bar vertical. We can basically set hold on. Okay, so I'm guessing this is the spacing for it. Maybe not. I completely forgot where we can set that. Okay, well, for these scroll bars, in this case, I'm just going to want to have it vertical. So the horizontal scroll bar, we can just remove it. So now we only have the vertical scroll bar. And now it is letting us do the spacing. That's interesting. Okay. Right. So now we only have the vertical one. We can set the spacing in the inspector. So we just want to increase that till we have it outside of our rounded edge. We can also make this look better. There we go. And if we go into the scroll bar, we can change the handle as well. Okay, I will make the edges a little bit more rounded. Okay, and I always hate how they do this spacing. Also, always -10. I always just set it to 0. There we go. And then the sliding area, I also set it to 0. In my opinion, it just makes it a lot easier to customize. I really don't understand why they set it to that, but all right, then we can set some colors for these. So I will make this a little bit darker so it's easier to see the handle. There we go. And maybe make it a little bit bigger. With bigger. There we go. Now, if you want to add things to the page, like we had our text, the slider, and the dropdown, instead of putting it directly into the page, we now need to add it into the viewport and then into the content. So I will just select our disabled items and put them inside content and then enable them again. Alright, so now they are inside these scroll page, but currently there's not really a need to have a scroll page because there's no, like, the content is not bigger than the page. To sort of emulate that, I will just add a very big text thing. So I will just add text, make it readable. There we go. Okay, and I will just set the height to a very tall thing so it goes outside of the page. But the page doesn't actually get bigger yet. You might think that it does because the content is now bigger than the page, but the content just goes outside of the page. To fix that, we can make the page automatically adjust to the content. And to do that, we can go to content. So if we click on content, you can already see the page is technically this big. There's just the page 2 text and new text is just outside of the page. Hello, welcome to the class. So to make sure that the page always is the same size as the content, we can add a component to it. We go to layout and then content size fitter. Then you'll get two options, horizontal fit and vertical fit. In this case, we want to vertically fit it. And then we just choose preferred size. And for some reason, that has completely shrunk it. That is not good. Horizontal works, but it broke your UI. Oh god. Horizontal also doesn't work for me. That's interesting. Like, these options are very useful, but they can be very tricky to set up. It's always just a little bit playing around with it. So I think I'm pretty sure how I fixed this issue before with my own UIs is selecting everything Then right click, create empty parent, so that everything is contained in a container inside of the content. Then on the content, we remove the content size fitter, then add component, layout, and then either horizontal or vertical layout group, doesn't really matter. Okay, and then select width and height. Then on the empty, like the container that we just added, the game object, add a component, layout, and then content size fitter, and then the vertical fit to preferred, and that still does not seem to work. Why? This is a bit interesting. That usually always worked. Yeah, I'm not sure why this is not working. Um, okay, we'll revisit that later. For now, we'll just set the page size manually, I guess. Um, so on the content, we can just set the height to whatever we want. In my case, I will set it to like 2000. And you'll see that the slider automatically adjusts to how big your page is. And that is pretty much how to set up a scroll view. Now, for VR, most people would like for you to just be able to drag anywhere on the page to scroll. By default, that is disabled. If you want to enable that, you have to go to scroll view, and then in the inspector, you can set the movement type to clamped, and that should allow you to do that. All right, then I'll test and show you what that looks like in game. All right, here we are. So we now have this scroll bar and I can scroll down. I can not drag on the page for some reason. But the scroll bar does work. So that's pretty much how to make a scroll view. All right. Then we're going to be moving on to some animation. So we're going to make a very simple animation for now, which is a button that sort of scales up a little bit when you hover over the button. Very simple, but it should show you a lot about how to animate things in UI. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now on page 1 we had a button already, so I will be going back to page 1. Here we go. So this set image, that is a button. That is the button that we will be using. If you don't have a button, you can just make any button. It doesn't really matter. So on our button, I will be adding a new component, which is animator right here. So now that we have an animator on it, we can make we can go into the assets that we have down here. Just make a new folder by right clicking, then go to create and folder. Just call this animations, something like that. Then go inside the folder and then right click create and then animator controller right here. Then we call this button hover. Okay. Then we click on our button, scroll down till we go back to the animator, and then we can drag in the animator that we just created into the controller right here. Now we have assigned a controller to this button, an animation controller. To actually start animating, we can press Ctrl 6 on our keyboard, and that will bring up the animation timeline. As you'll see, it says to begin animating, create an animation clip. So that is what we will be doing. We will need 2 different animations, animation clips. They will basically act like different states. So the first state will be default. It doesn't really matter what you name it, but I find default just a simple, useful name. And then you'll see that the button to create a new clip is gone. But technically it's not, it's just a little bit hidden. To add a new clip, you'll have to click on default up here, this drop down, and then create new clip. And then we can add the second clip, which will be hover, something like that. Okay. And now we can switch between the 2 clips using this drop down. And to actually start animating, we will first do the default one. We can click this record button up here. And now everything we do to this button will be recorded into the animation. So in the inspector, I will be going to the scale and I'm going to turn this on so it's all uniform. And then since this is the default, we just want to keep it 1 because this is when we don't hover over it. So it will stay like this when we don't hover over it. I just set it to 1. So scale 1. You can also see that here now in the animation timeline. We can stop recording, and that is pretty much it for the default one. And then for hover, we want to record again, and this time set the scale to a different values, like 1.2. That looks pretty good. So when we don't hover, we can use this preview to preview the animation, the state. So when we don't hover over it, it will be like this. And when we hover, it will be a little bit bigger, like this. Now that we have set up these two states, we can go into the animation controller, which to open that one, we have to go all the way at the top of Unity, go to Window, then Animation, and then Animator. Then we get this window. In here, we first have to select our animator that we created. And you'll see our two states are already in here, the default one and hover. Currently, as you can see, when you run the game, it will first go to what is hooked up to entry. So in this case, that is default. So when the game runs, it will go to the default state. You can also change that by right-clicking a different one and selecting Set as Layer Default State. As you can see, now when the game runs, it will first go to this one. We don't want that, we just want to keep the default one, so I will keep that one like that. But now we need to make it so that when we actually hover over the button, it will set the proper state. To do that, we will need a parameter. So if we in the top left, if we go to the parameters tab, you'll see that it's currently empty, but we can add one by pressing this plus button. And there's a few options. In this case, I think we will be going with an int. Most of the time, pretty much most of the time I use ints because it's very useful and very simple to set up. So when selecting that, you'll be able to give it a name. In this case, I will just call it state. Make sure you remember that name because we will be needing that to actually set this parameter. So name it something that you can easily remember. Now that we have a parameter, we can set a default value. So when the game runs, this will be the default value of this parameter. I will just keep that 0. And then now we need to hook up that when that parameter is a certain value, it goes to hover, and when it's another value, it will go to default. To do that, we right click on any state, click make transition, and then drag it to default, and do that again for the hover one. Now we have two arrows that go to those two. If we click on the first one, the one that goes to default, we have a few settings in the inspector. You'll have to open up the settings by clicking this drop down. We can set things like the transition duration, can transition to self, offset, all sorts of stuff. But the most important things will be transition duration and can transition to self. Those are the things that you'll likely be using most in animating. In this case, we don't want it to transition to self. And the transition duration, you can set it yourself to whatever you want. That's basically the time it takes for it to go from default to hover, or from hover to default. I'll just keep that. Actually, I might make it 0.1, maybe 0.15. There we go. And the can transition to self, basically, if you enable that, it will just, even if it is already on default, it will keep going to default. We don't really need that, so we disable that. And then at the bottom of the inspector, there's conditions. Currently empty, there's no condition, so we will need to add one by clicking the plus button. And it's already selected the state parameter, so when state is either greater, less, equals, or not equal, in this case we will select equals. So when state equals 0, it will go to this animation. Now we will pretty much do the same for the animation for hover. So we've got the transition again. I will set that to 0.15. Disable can transition to self. And then as for the condition, this time, since we've already used equals 0, we need to choose a different one. So when state equals 1, for example, you can choose any number, but I'll just use 1. It's a lot simpler, easy to remember. So when state equals 1, then it will go to this one. That is pretty much how to set that up. So now we have set up the entire animation. Now we can go back to the scene. So at the top, we can go back to scene right here. And now we're back to our button. Now we need to actually make it so that a state gets triggered when we hover over the button. By default, buttons don't have an event that gets triggered when you hover over it. We will need to add an event ourselves. We can do that by going to the button, then scrolling down in the inspector. Let me make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Click add component, and then search for event, and then there should be an option event trigger. Select that one, and then we can add a new event type. There's a lot of different options, like pointer, enter, exit, down, up, click, drag, loads of different options. But in this case, we want pointer, enter, because we want when you hover that it changes the state. So we've got pointer, enter right now. We can add actions to it by clicking the plus button. And this is pretty much the same as setting up the on click that we did earlier in a previous class. So we will just drag in the button as the object, but now we are going to select the animator because we're going to be changing a parameter of the animator. So we want to set the int, if that is possible. Maybe not. I'm not sure if set trigger int works, but we can try. Actually, no, that's not going to work. Okay, so we will have to go back into the animator and change the parameter. Usually I set this up with circuits, and with functions you are able to do it with an int parameter, but apparently in this case, since we're not using a function to do it, we're not able to. So we're going to be deleting the state parameter. Yep, delete it. And add a trigger parameter. So we're going to be calling this, let's say hover. Okay. Then select the animation that goes from, or the transition that goes from any state to hover. And then in the conditions, we will select hover. So when hover gets executed, it will go to that animation, that state. And then we are going to need another trigger for exit or something like that to go back to the normal one. There we go. Now we can go back to the button. And instead of this one, we will select animator set trigger string. There we go. And now we can enter what we called those parameters. So in our case, that is hover. So hover. So now when I hover over the button, it will trigger the parameter called hover, and it should go to that state. Now, we also need a way to go back out of the state. So we will need to add another event type, which is pointer exit. And as you can see, it's already copied what we had in pointer enter, which is really useful because we just have to change the name, which was exit. So now it should, when we hover over the button, it should make it bigger. So we can try that out. All right. So yeah, as you can see, when I hover over the button, it gets bigger, and it goes back to normal when I don't hover over it. So yeah, that's pretty much how you can use animations to do things. Is there any questions, or is anyone running into issues with animations? Because I know some people really wanted to know about animations. Yours doesn't work. Okay. Are you able to share your screen so I can see what's going on? Yeah? Okay. Let me invite you real quick. Okay. So you've got the event set up. That is good. Are you able to go to your animator? Okay. Uh, yep. Oh, that one doesn't have a condition. So for that one, you'll have to choose the exit condition. Yeah. Yeah, it works. Cool. Is anyone else running into issues with animations? No questions or issues? Okay. I do see some people still typing in the chat. You guys can feel free to keep typing whatever you're typing. Um, I oh, why shoes? Yeah. I mean, there's not many shoes in full body yet, so I guess it's good. Um, so that at the time was very tricky to do because pretty much I think we had like 30 text objects um, that just got placed where someone hit and then animated. But now that we have the replicator, you technically only just need one, and you can just spawn it wherever you need and do it that way. But yeah, at the time we just had a lot of text objects and we just placed it where someone got hit using set position and then just animate it to slowly fade out. That's pretty much it. Um, okay, we still have 40 minutes left and we're already through everything for this class. So I guess if anyone has questions or is running into issues, I'll be able to help out. Um, someone earlier asked about the anchor. I guess I'll quickly be able to go over that. Yeah? Okay. Um, all right. So let's make this UI anchorable. Is that a word? Anchorable? I don't know. um, okay. So on our canvas, we should have the option can be anchored. Let's enable that. Then there is two options, frame screens canvas and anchor canvas as menu. I'm not entirely sure what each of these two does, but you can try them out to see what works best for you. Um, oh, actually, there's just text that says what it is. So, frame screens canvas is for screens and mobile players, moves the camera to frame the canvas. Okay, so this option like moves your camera to the UI, and I think the other one moves the UI to you. Yeah, moves the canvas to you. Okay. So whichever one you want, I'll choose the first one for this in this case. So now that that's turned on, we can make a function. So just go to the main prefab. Then we add a new function. And then we can call this set anchor, something like that. You can call it whatever you want. We need an input port, which I will call anchor question mark. Actually, I'll just call it enabled. Then we're going to be doing something that we haven't done before, which is a switch method. So what we've done before is just plain instructions, but we can have conditions for instructions. So, for example, if a value is either true, do this. If it's not true, do something else. To set that up, we can click these little 3 dots, and instead of method, we can click switch, and this will create a switch case, which is pretty much an if this then that sort of setup. So we will have to select an input port. In this case, we have the enabled port. The default one we can remove. That one doesn't really matter. And then for cases, there's a plus button here. We need to add 2 cases. So you'll see case off and case on. That basically is false and true. So the off check mark is when the bool is false, and the on check mark is true. Oh, didn't mean to click that. So now we just have to drop in the canvas into each. And then we can select a method. So for this method, we will go to Rec Room Studio Canvas Interaction, and then anchor canvas. Actually, for this one, since this is the false one, so enabled false, then it needs to stop being anchored, so which is detach canvas. And then when it is enabled, it needs to execute anchor canvas. So that's how we can set up a function to anchor and to detach, all in one function. So you don't need multiple functions to anchor and detach. You can all do it in one function. So let's test it. Okay. So we should have a new function. I'll just create like 2 buttons here or something. Or a toggle. Actually, no. I'll just do a button. Okay, so configure the function to be set anchor. Then connect this. So now we can select false to disable or true to enable the anchor. So there we go. Now it's nicely anchored. And we can just press escape to exit. Um, you can also add like another button to exit, and then you can use false to detach. Um, in this case, to demonstrate it, I'll just add a delay so that after a few seconds it will just kick us out. I didn't really need that button. Right, so we are now anchored, and then in 5 seconds it should kick us out. There we go. So that's anchoring. Very easy. Is there any questions about anchoring? No questions? Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they want me to quickly explain about UI? Because we still got like 30 minutes. You've got too many questions. Okay, well, go right ahead. We've got time. Uh, one of your UI is blacked out and you can't do anything with it. That? What the heck? Yeah, that does look weird. I've never seen that. Did that just randomly happen or it does say canvas environmental. I don't know what that is. Let me take a look online. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing that's a different type of canvas. Hmm. So when did this happen that it just was grayed out and you couldn't do anything? Has it always been like that? Wait, you have a canvas inside of a canvas. Wait. Uh can you click on your UI? Oh, oh, you figured it out? Yeah. Um what you could do is copy the one that just says canvas. So just click on the one that says canvas, then do either right click and copy or just Control C. Then go outside of your prefab, and then in here, in your scene, make an empty, and then right click, and then paste as child. And then make that empty one, this game object, a new prefab, and that should be it. Cool. Yep, only 6 people. Maybe, um, yeah, class is pretty much over. Um, I'm just here if anyone has questions or running into issues or um, want me to explain something about UI that you really want to know about. You can ask me. What's your question, Mr. Unknown? But yeah, the lack of people, I think maybe most people have realized, oh, we can just watch the recordings. So I think most people are just doing that. When you click the button on UI to teleport you to another room. Yeah, also a lot of people are signing up and don't know what they're getting into. Yeah, pretty much, because on a lot of the signups, like for the signups on this class, I put in a little thing like, what do you want to learn most about this class? If you guys remember that. And a lot of people were putting in things that have nothing to do with Studio or UI. So if you remember, I even put out an announcement saying um, what this class is actually for. Because a lot of people were saying things that have nothing to do with this. um, but yeah, to make a button teleport you to another room, it's pretty much just the circuits and circuit event, yeah. So remember we set up this button right here? We made it send an event, this one. You can pretty much hook that up to a go to room. There we go. And then a destination room constant. And then you can set the room. It's very easy. It's pretty much just the same how we set up this button to send a circuits event. Making the UI disappear, like when you click the button. You can do that in a few different ways. You can either go onto the button and add an action to it, to the on-click action list, and then put in the canvas as the object, and then you can just do game object set active and then set that to none. Basically that will then disable the whole canvas if you click it. Or if you want to do it with circuits, you can make a function. So if I make a new function, set active, I'll call it, then add an input port. So enabled. Actually, I'll call it set enabled. Then put in the canvas again. And then for the method, we should do game object active set, and then choose the enabled. And that is pretty much it. So now we should have a function in the game that allows us to enable or disable the whole canvas. Is it possible to have UI local, so if every player has a UI, it won't cause lag, as there is only one for each player and only that player can see their UI? Yes, pretty much it already is local. Like everything you do in Studio is already local. I'm guessing you also want to set the position of that UI individually for every player. To do that, you do have to set up a function to set the position instead of the set position chip that is currently already in Rec Room. But I can quickly show how that works in a bit. Oh, funky bug. Okay, so now we should have a function called setEnabled, which will allow us to disable or enable the canvas. And of course, you can hook that up to a button, whatever you want to do. All right, and to set up the position, the set position thing, we also add a new function. We can call it set transform, something like that. We are going to need to add, actually, we'll just call it set position. Should we? No, we'll do transform, probably the best one. So we need two input ports, which is position and rotation. Position will be a vector 3, and rotation will be a quaternion. If you don't know what these value types are, vector 3 is basically 3 different coordinates, pretty much. Like if you look up here at the transform, you'll see where it says position X, Y, and Z. That's pretty much a vector 3. Quaternion is a rotational value. It's kind of similar to a vector 3, except it has 4 values instead of 3. So that's pretty much what those two are. Now for the instruction, we will again drop in the canvas and select rect transform, and then position. Wait, hold on. Yeah, so we need position set and another one for rotation set. And we just select the input ports that we made, and there we go. That is the function. Now let's test it. And since functions are all local, this will just set the position locally for each individual player. UI that can follow you. Kind of like what the watch does? Do you mean that? So that you could try setting that up with circuits. I'll see if I can quickly demonstrate something like that. We've got 9 minutes left. All right, so we have the set transform function. So let me get like my body position and body orientation. So now if I run this, you'll see that the UI is right inside of me. And actually maybe not the body orientation, but head orientation. Head orientation. Okay. But now you'll see it's just inside of me, which is probably not very good. You probably want it a little bit in front of you. To do that, we can add a bit of the value. So we will need get forward. If you don't know what's going on, don't worry. It's I'll explain it in a little bit. Wait. Parse float. There we go. Okay. So what this will do is it will get our body position and then get our forward facing direction, and it will in our forward facing direction it will add 1 meter and then add that to the body position. So this will end up being 1 meter in front of us basically. So if I now execute it, the UI isn't inside of me, it is 1 meter in front of me. Of course you can set that to whatever you want. So if I want it like 5 meters in front of me, there we go. Very easy. UI that you can only see. That is very easy. Remember we made earlier we made that function that allows you to enable and disable UI. You can pretty much just use that because that again is a function, so it's local. So it only gets enabled or disabled for the person who executes that function. So you could by default set your UI to be disabled by right-clicking your canvas and toggle active state. So now by default it is deactivated, and then you can use that function to enable it for a certain person. All right. Is there any quick questions? We've got like 4 minutes. For the final project, does the UI have to make sense or can it be like this? It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. You'll just have to, like the UI just has to have a certain things in it. So it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. It just has to have some required things in it. And they need to work, of course. Um, the final project, some of the requirements for the final project will include things that you've learned in previous classes, like in all these classes that you're having. All right, I think that is pretty much it for this class. Will you? Yeah, there will be a graduation for this class. All right, I think we're done with this class. If anyone still has questions, you can just send me a DM, of course, or put it in the class chat. Next week, we'll go over user interaction and dynamic UI elements. So that's going to be fun. That will include a lot more circuits and things, so that should be cool. But yeah, other than that, thanks for joining this class and see you next week.